Jordan's Journey YouTube channel. I'm Jordan Thorpe and I am a life coach, speaker, and author. And today's message, we are going to be talking about prayer and position. And I posted that on my Instagram a couple days ago, prayer and position. But I got a lot of feedback about what does it look like to position yourself. We say, okay, we need to pray. Okay, we say we need to position ourselves, but what does that actually look like to position ourselves so God is able to move in our life? What does that look like in our day-to-day life? So I had couple, six, six things that I wanted to talk about with you all to give you an idea of what that looks like to get yourself in position so God is able to move in your life. But before we get started, I wanted to let you all know that I do have a book out called Jordan's Journey: Practical Guide for Finding Self and Purpose, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle. And I just talk about my journey to Christ, and there's YouTube videos um, and that you can watch that talks further in depth on what the book is about. Also, if you are a single mom or know of a single mom, please join our Facebook group. I go live once a month and we talk about all kinds of different topics about dating with children, um, praying over your children, how to cover your children. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, I am a blogger and I have so many blog posts on a lot of inner issues, on personal development, on spiritual growth. So be sure to check that out. And I will put all the links to the book, to the Single Moms Club Facebook group, and to my website to subscribe and also to receive your devotionals. All those links will be in the description below. So make sure you check that out. Okay, so back to the topic. I have a few notes here because I wrote some things down and came prepared so I don't forget. Um, I don't forget what the main points that I wanted to bring up in this video. So, as I'm studying, I'm in the book of Numbers, and I'm studying Moses. And if you don't know the story of Moses, Moses was one of God's faithful servants. And God told Moses to deliver his people, the Israelites, out of Egypt, out of captivity, out of bondage, and take them to the promised land. Now, Moses delivered them out of Egypt, but it took them 40 years to get to the promised land that God had prepared for them. And during that time, the people of God's people, the Israelites, they were complaining, telling Moses to take us back. You know, what are you doing? You have us out here. We have no food. And they wanted to kill Moses many times during that process because they didn't have faith in God or in him that they were going to make it to the promised land. But Moses remained so faithful, and I thought that he would be a good example of someone we can study and look at his attributes of somebody who positioned themselves daily so God was able to move in their life. So I have 6 points, 6 attributes that Moses had that I think would be really helpful for us to apply in our day-to-day lives, that we should try to take on so God is able to move in our life. So, number 1, he was obedient. Moses was very, Moses was very obedient, and he lived a surrendered life. God told him to lead his people out of captivity, and that's what Moses did. You see, how many of us are willing to move when God tells us to move? I think that's where most of us get stuck because we can be so caught up in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day routine, in our comfort zone, but when God tells us to move, we're not willing to go. So are you really living an obedient life? That's something that you should ask yourself. If God told me to move and go to a land where he would show me, or go and speak out against something that everyone is for, are you willing to do that? Are you fully surrendered, or are you just surrendered in one area? Oh Lord, I'm surrendered because I go to Bible study, but my love life, I got that. I love little Johnny, Lord. Please don't take little Johnny. No, you have to let little Johnny go if that's where the Lord is leading and guiding you. So it's not just in one aspect of your life, it's being obedient in every aspect of your life. And that is a surrendered life. Number 2, he knew how to cry out to God. And that's important. When times got hard for the Israelites, when they were ready to basically kill Moses, Moses cried out to God in prayer. And he said, sometimes you have to remind the Lord the promises that he has over your life. Cry out to him in prayer. Lord, you said that you were going to get me through this. You said in your word that all things work together for my good. You said that if we petition in prayer that you hear us and your will be done. This is in your word. And sometimes you have to remind God and fight back with the word of God and let him know, like, Lord, this is what you said. This is what you promised me, and I'm standing on your word. And that's what Moses did. Each time that he was ready to get in confrontation and in battle with the Israelites where they weren't being obedient or following his lead, Moses cried out, God, you told me to deliver these people and they aren't listening. Help me. You said that you were going to provide, that you were going to deliver us and see us through this. Where are you? And God showed up every time. There were times when God wanted to just kill the Israelites off, and Moses prayed, Lord, do not kill them off because you promised that you will deliver them. And God honored that. So it's important that you cry out to God with the word of God. And you have to remind him, when you hit rock bottom, Lord, you said that you were going to do it. You said that in your word, that you were going to provide, that you were going to protect. And that is what God wants to hear. Because when you cry out to God, that is positioning him to move instantly in your life. Number 3, Moses sacrificed. And in biblical times, I wrote a blog about this too. In biblical times, they did a lot of sacrificing. They sacrificed cow, they sacrificed harvest. They did a tenth. Tithing was a sacrifice. There were so many physical sacrifices. But now that Jesus died, we don't really live by those kind of sacrifices. Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. So now, what do you sacrifice? Have you sacrificed your life? Are you willing to lay aside God's plans for your life? Your plans for your life, for God's plans for your life. Are you willing to lay that down on the line and say, Lord, it's not my will, but it's your will. Whatever you need me to do, wherever you need me to go, I will go. I will say. And what are you sacrificing? The most important thing we can give up in today's time is our time. Are you waking up on your phone, or are you waking up and opening up God's word? We can be so busy and everything else, but how do you have time for everything else, but you don't have time for the one who gave you everything? It's a little bit backwards. So what are you making time for? Because whatever you make time for, that is the priority. So we want to make sure that we are sacrificing our life, sacrificing our time for, if it's just waking up in prayer before you get on your phone, your body. Are you honoring God with your body? Are you, just sleeping with everyone that tells you you're cute? Or you say, you know what, my body is not my own, and it is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So I am going to honor God with my body by being abstinent until I get married. Do what you feel led to do, but I ask you, what are you sacrificing? What are you sacrificing? What are you putting aside to say, you know what, God, I am going to honor you through my life by doing this. Number 4, he knows that the battle is not his to fight. The battle is not yours, it's God's. And if God called you to do it, He will see you through it. And that's what you need to remember. See, when God makes you a leader, there will be people who will try to gather together, who hate and try to rebel. But you have to understand, you don't have to clap back or, try to fight back with your words. But you have to take that to God, because God will handle that. And there were many times that people tried to rebel up against Moses. And what did Moses do? Moses went to God. He still showed love, because he knew that the battle was not his. And that is really what comes when you are a leader, when you are God's faithful servant. You should really expect that. So he did not try to attack them or try to hurt them with words. He took it to God, and God handled it. There was no weapon that was formed against Moses, no weapon formed against the Israelites that could have came to attack them, to hurt them, because God was covering them. And when you are in alignment with God, you set yourself up for his covering. You'll find that there were things that will try to come to attack you, but they won't get through. No weapon formed against me shall prosper, because you know that if God sent you and he gave you a word and you are obedient in his word, that he's going to cover you and he's going to make sure he sees you through it. So Moses knew that the battle was not his to fight. And two more. Number 5. And this is really important. And number 5 is he took the chains off his mind. And when I wrote this down, it's important that you understand, when you position yourself for God to move in your life, a lot of times it's not an actual physical position. So for example, I'm not going to say, okay, for God to move in my life, I need to be in the house all day. No. In order to position yourself, in order for God to move in your life, it's a mindset. It's your mind. It's developing the mindset that you do not move without God, that you take everything to God in prayer, that you are honoring God, that you are sacrificing. It's a lifestyle. So one of the things that Moses did was he took the chains off his mind, because a lot of the Israelites were delivered, but their mind was still in bondage, that they didn't even know that they were in slavery. They were complaining to Moses, "What are you doing? You have us out here. We have no food. We have no water. Why did you take us from our home from Egypt?" Because they didn't understand that they were in bondage. It was their mind, because they were delivered. They were set free physically, but their mind was still in captivity. So it's important that you develop the mindset of a lifestyle that is a godly and that's in alignment with God's will for your life. So God was able to perform many miracles through Moses, because Moses' mindset was not limited. One of the miracles that God performed while the Israelites were in the wilderness was Moses had his stick, and he hit the stick, and he turned the rock into water because they were thirsty. So, but one of the things that Moses did was he never doubted God. Like, he was so faithful, like his faith was so strong, and this is my prayer for myself and for you, that our faith is so strong that God is able to move, and we can live a life just with no limits, that we believe that God is capable of anything and everything more. What eyes have never seen, what ears have never heard. It says that in the word, that that's what God will do for you. So Moses did his part by believing. There was no doubt. There was no fear. He believed that God was going to bring him through, and he never doubted God each time. Even when they were attacking him, he never doubted him. He just had such a strong faith. And God was able to perform and move the way he did with Moses, because Moses did not put limits onto what God can do for him and in his life. And that's how we need to be. We have to stop putting limitations on God, because his ways are not our ways. So a lot of times, because the way we think is not how God thinks. So you really just want to pray for God's will, because it can happen in so many different ways. You just never know. So it's important that you take the chains off the mind, take the limits off of what God can do for you, and just really live a life of just believing that if He brought you to it, He will see you through it. And lastly, number 6, have a meeting place. Where do you go to talk to God? Moses had a secret tent that every time he went to talk to God, he went to this tent and God would meet him there. And God would show up and God would talk to him and God would give him direction and give him guidance on what he needed to do. And I have a meeting place. When I'm talking to God, especially in the morning and at night, I have a palette of just pillows because I like to lay out and just like pour my heart out. Like, especially at the end of a long day, like, Lord, let me tell you what happened. This is how I felt. What do you need me to do next? And it's important that you have a consistent place because God will show up and He will meet you. But you want to be consistent with it. So where do you go? Do you know, some of us talk to God in our car throughout the day. That's fine. But I believe that, you know, you do need a meeting place, somewhere consistent where God can show up and, you know, you guys can meet and talk and discuss. So those are the 6 points. And I'm going to go through them one more time really quickly. So number 1. So these are the attributes that we're looking at Moses. Moses was God's faithful servant. And God showed up for Moses each and every time, and God talked with Moses. And right now, I believe that we're in a year of prayer and position. And I think every year is the year really of prayer and position, not just 2018, but this is something that you need to be taking in every year and just making it a lifestyle of prayer and then positioning yourself for God to be able to move in your life. And that has a lot to do with knowing what season you're in and then what you should be doing in that season. So when I say prayer, you need to be praying and asking God, and then also positioning yourself. So positioning yourself as far as what do I need to be doing? What do I need to be doing? What does that look like in my day-to-day life to position myself for God to move? So Moses had a lot of good attributes that we just looked at. So number 1, he was obedient. Number 2, he knew how to cry out to God. Number 3, he sacrificed. What are you sacrificing? Number 4, he knew that the battle was not his to fight, but the battle was God, and God fought all his battles for him. Number 5, he took the chains off his mind. He didn't put any limitations on what God can do for him. And number 6, he had a meeting place, a consistent meeting place where he would go and talk to God. So that is all I have for now. I hope this video was helpful to you and just provides encouragement and that you were able to grow from this video. And be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you back here with another video soon. Okay, bye.